Okay. I'm John Adams,
Lucas.
and we are those Adams brothers doing a video series on our discussions about pretty much anything. We have these discussions a lot of times sitting at a bar, so since we're not at a bar, we can drink at our house. So cheers. Cheers, brother.
Cheers to that.
And so we figured that we'd videotape what we talked about sometimes earlier today. Happy Easter, by the way. Earlier today, we had some discussions at the Easter dinner table with our parents, who are doing well, no problems. But so I kind of feel like we saved some of that for today. Maybe I forgot what we talked about already.
It got kind of argumentative, you might say, as it usually does. Basically, yeah, that's kind of the whole thing, is that John and I, obviously we're brothers, but we've known each other our entire lives. Pretty much that entire time, we find ourselves as brothers, and siblings often do. We find ourselves arguing about very minuscule ideas, like
Sometimes we be very stupid.
Coke, Pepsi, Bud Light, or Coors, like what, just dumb things. Anything we can find to sort of pick a fight about, we'll do it. And so we don't necessarily need an audience, but it's one definitely helps kind of go it along a little bit. So today at dinner, like he was saying, with our parents, we had some conversation. What was it about? Furniture and antiques or something? And I started getting into the idea of like, well, really, isn't it just the story that you're telling about this that sells the value of the antique? And that's when John was like, we got to do this show right now.
Because Lucas is in an exceptional argumentative mood today, so that's why I was thinking, man, we need to get this thing started. So here we are. So I guess one thing we were talking about, which is very topical, I thought you had an interesting thought today, which I thought was a revelation myself. And you can repeat what you said, what you're talking about, a little bit about politics, COVID, and the media.
Which part? About what I was watching last night?
Right. Watching
TV. I was watching, the media obviously has become sort of a much bigger player, I guess, and everything that it should be, I suppose.
By the way, if you don't know us, I lean right, Lucas leans left. So there's an oil and water situation going on there.
So, But yesterday it was interesting because what I've noticed, certainly a lot of people have noticed this, but I mean, I lean to the left. I'm mostly a centrist, but I noticed the only news channel that I get is CNN. And so they're the only ones that I have any exposure to, really. They're the only ones that I can really analyze or criticize. And I also know that they have certain times of day that are for the news and certain times of day that are for sort of the entertainment aspect of it, which, typically is going to be the prime time slots, any time, I guess, after 6 or 7 o'clock. And last night I just happened to flip it through, and I was watching this one segment about testing. And they were talking about the importance of early testing and making sure everyone knows whether or not they, who's got it, who doesn't, and this and that. And then someone brought up I guess the president had been talking about the antibody test, which is a test that has more to do with discovering not only who has the virus, but who has recovered from the virus, who has the antibodies from that, which would give them potential immunity and as a result would aid in the development of a vaccine much more quickly, which to me seems like the more important of the two tests. They were talking about it as though it was a one or the other type of situation. Either we can focus on testing, the early testing, which they were maintaining was more important, or we can do what the administration says, which is go after this antibody testing, which apparently they say that the administration is saying is more important.
So what'd you come up with?
And I mean, I'm sitting there thinking to myself the whole time, why can't you do both? What is wrong with the antibody test? If the antibody test will tell you whether or not you have the virus also, why not do that one and not, for all the testing? Now, if it's a resource issue and you can't do, the antibody test takes longer or costs more money or whatever, then you can still do the early testing. Like, I don't see why you can't do both of those tests.
Okay, so what was your revelation?
What I kind of got to, the realization that I sort of made, not that I haven't made this before, but it just sort of gave me more evidence to this point, is that CNN is really only interested, most of the time, at least during their entertainment segments, is really only more interested in disputing whatever the president and his administration says
Yes.
than they are about entertaining notions that could or couldn't work, finding solutions. Like,
So,
they're not necessarily looking to find a solution, they're just looking to see what the president says and then react to that negatively.
when
But that's not that CNN's the only one that does that. It's just, that's the only channel that I get. So it's the only one that I can scrutinize in that way. I'm absolutely certain that the other news channels do the same thing. So I'm not just harping on CNN, but the media. This is why people don't trust the media.
So, do they do that with anything else that Trump does?
CNN does just about everything that Trump does.
Right.
And there are some of them are good. Like there's a few, without naming any particular names, some of them are better at it than others in sort of maintaining at least some air of objectivity, even though it's not true, objectivity. But there are others, even in the news department, and this is true of Fox, and I'm sure MSNBC. But there are others that who seem to be their sole purpose is only to refute whatever the president is saying. So the problem, obviously, with this is that if the president and his administration comes up with what is deemed, in fact, universally to be a good idea, like I think the antibody test is probably a good idea, CNN's not willing to not only give him any credit for that, they're almost willing to go as far as to debunk that whole concept as a potential reality, only in service of whatever their agenda seems to be.
With that being said,
And that's problematic.
with that being said, do you think that when he says we shouldn't lock down the country, blah blah, do you think that that's, you don't always agree with Trump, but you
do not agree with Trump.
But you do see that the media always disagrees with him.
It seems as though the news media, either they disagree with him on everything he says, or they like Fox News has a tendency to agree with him on everything.
Sure, I'm
Fox News
bumping them all into the same kind of.
Like Fox News is sort of the other side of that. Like they're willing to go above and beyond and justify a bald-faced lie that the president's telling the American people, and call it the absolute truth and the most heroic thing they've ever heard in their lives.
Is there something else that you've seen that Trump has said that the media right now in this COVID-19 thing, that Trump has said that the media goes against it, you are like they shouldn't go against him on that. They're wrong to disagree.
In this one instance of testing, because testing is obviously obviously important, and early testing.
Sure.
But the notion that one side of the testing is more important than the other, I think, is ridiculous. Now, again, it may be a resource issue. There may be a lot.
But they didn't explain their side.
Well, there may be a lot of parts of this that I don't really understand. But only the points that they were making in their panel. It was the anchor and two analysts and one doctor and somebody else, and the points that they were making were, they weren't very nuanced. It was basically, the more important thing is the early testing, and that's the most important thing, so we need to be focused on that. And for some reason or another, the administration wants to focus on this antibody testing that is not as important. And so their whole conversation was devaluing the antibody testing, which I think is extremely important. I think it's I'm not going to say it's more important to know, but it's at least as important to know who's already had it, who's got the antibodies, and whose blood can potentially be used to find a vaccine, who's already been infected and gotten over it and has the antibodies, potentially is immune to it, can go back to work. All of those things are important.
So do you think the media's working against the president?
I don't say that. It's hard for me to say that they're working against, because the media doesn't make policy. The media may influence people's opinions,
whatever they can do.
In situations like this, the American public doesn't make policy either. So,
well, I know, but they're working against them. In other words, they're trying to catch him in something that's not right. What I would say is that they're in this particular, and in most cases, that the news media is more interested and willing to hype its own agenda, whatever that is, right or left, or whoever they want to be, the president or whatever. They're more interested in hyping their own agenda at times than they are in sort of. I think they do it all the time.
They've got newspapers to sell. I get it.
I think they do it all the time, like all the time.
Yeah,
I read an article today, or I saw a headline. It was a post or whatever. There's a picture, and I don't know where it came from, but it was a picture of the president and the Easter bunny.
Yeah.
And then on the bottom it said President Trump in parentheses on the right.
Oh, I see. And the joke
Easter
was,
bunny on the left.
you don't know which one's the Easter bunny. Sure.
And somebody pointed out, like, look, they thought it was okay they thought it was necessary to tell you who the president was, which one was the president. I just thought that was silly to freaking do, and either post or even.
I mean, I need more context, but yeah, I hear you. Like,
you know what I mean? Like that's all it was. That's all it kind of. Anyway,
yeah.
what about COVID-19 to you, Lucas? Think is very annoying.
Annoying?
Yeah. Like, was there anything annoying about what we're going through right now?
Yeah. I mean, bars are closed. That's kind of annoying. Other than that, I mean.
Well, let's go into that. Bars are closed. They can't make any money.
Other than that, I mean, bars and restaurants are closed. That's annoying.
Yeah, like there's some bars around.
I understand why they're closed. I don't want them to reopen just because I'm annoyed.
Yeah.
But I'm annoyed by it, nonetheless. I mean.
Yeah.
I mean, I
Do you think they should be closed?
I think that anywhere that whose business model requires lots of people to get together at the same time should probably not be entertaining that option.
Do you think there's an inconsistent? I'm trying to figure out something we can argue about. Is there any? Shit, I was thinking about my pen. Your pen. Is there any inconsistencies in that? Like, I mean, like I go to Walmart and I see everybody in the world there.
Oh yeah.
It's
You mean
a
like
disease fest, and
you mean okay? Yeah. Like I think that. I don't know. It's a tough one because I mean I think that grocery stores should be a little bit more vigilant about how many people can be in the store at one time. I think the whole going to the grocery store is an annoying experience now. Not that it wasn't before, but I mean it's.
Yeah.
Now you go and you look at the shelves, there's no paper towels, there's no toilet paper, even though there's probably some sitting in the box somewhere in the back. But meanwhile, they've got the store employees restocking baking goods for some reason. And so it's like, I've had to jump around store to store to find things that I need here and there. And that's annoying for sure, but I get it. I mean, we're in a crisis situation that not a lot of people know how to deal with, so.
I mean, I'm on the fence. Like some days I'm like, man, this is crap. We need to open stuff back up and let people be just safe, and not force them to be safe. Just let them be safe.
Sort of the ideological freedom is best idea.
Well, not completely, but I mean, I feel bad for people that are not making money right now, and they have no fault of their own. They're going out of business.
Sure. Yeah.
Basically, every day they're going out of business.
That really sucks.
They're falling in a deeper hole they still have to get out of after this is all over.
To me, that shows bigger flaws in the system, the way the system's set up.
I don't know. See, that's the other side of it. I don't think there's anything you can do to it. No,
No,
here's what I come down
I
to.
don't know.
Is it overhyped? Is it overhyped?
If I do that, I wouldn't be sitting here, huh?
Of course. Is it overhyped? Like, do we do this
Oh,
too quickly?
Well, I'd say overreaction is better than underreaction in this situation.
You're right. In
No
those
doubt about that.
situations, but we're about to bail out the airlines.
Well, airlines, look, as far as that all goes, I've read several articles about how, the airlines, want to be bailed out, but they use their last time we bailed out the airlines, they used like 96% of that money for stock buybacks to inflate the value of their stock after the stock crash.
Yeah, well, they
or whatever.
shouldn't be doing that shit.
And that should be against the rules. The problem is that corporations, though they have tons of influence and money and resources, they don't vote.
Well,
So they're not as easily held accountable by governmental entities. And government, especially in today's world, government is more interested in supporting business than it is in punishing business for the crap that they do. So a business, gets fined $1 billion but makes $1 trillion a year. That's a drop in the bucket.
but
Government's not that
here's the
easy
thing.
to-
Like the same with the
Yeah.
airplanes. They've got
Businesses don't
such
get
a,
evicted from
they've
their
got-
factories for breaking the rules
but they got power, right?
because they have money and resources.
Well, they got power because they've got a service that everybody wants. If they don't,
I mean,
crank
that's one way to look
If
at
they
it.
don't crank up their airplanes, they
The
decide,
service
no,
that-
we're just out of money. We
The
can't do it.
service that everyone wants, everyone you're talking about, is people in government. The service they want is campaign
No,
contributions.
I need airplanes for my business to be.
Sure, fine, but
for me to make money, I need airplanes to be flying.
that's true.
And I'm just a little dude in one.
That's true.
Corner of the world.
But at the
so.
same time, if the airlines, to me, it's like the banking industry. If you're just going to give them, a bunch of money so they can give their CEOs
I know, I get
bonuses.
that part. I get that part. They're not supposed to do that. That's where it should be
I mean,
more regulated.
if they're going to do that, so they can take care of the employees, so they don't have to
But you can't also micromanage their business.
To fire
We're in a free
everybody.
country.
I get that, but some regulation is necessary. This is kind of where that comes in.
It's sort of
The
weird.
laissez-faire, the let's leave it up to the businesses to solve their own problems. Well, you see what happens when we do that. You know, we left it up to the banks to regulate themselves after, 1999, after the City Travelers Act was passed. And you see where that led. Less than 10 years later, they crashed the entire economy.
I don't think they completely regulated themselves.
No, they did. They
No,
believe me,
there's some
man.
regulations that were lifted to let them
The-
go run
The
wild.
moment the Glass-Steagall Act of 1933 was repealed by the City Travelers Act of 1999, the moment Bill Clinton signed that into law, that basically gave banks the ability to do things they couldn't do before, like
Right.
bundle securities and cut them up and sell them as this other thing.
So why didn't
Like
he
break
sign
into
that?
that,
Well,
right?
then why he could have not signed that?
Yeah, he could have not, but that was all political at the time. He had a Republican Congress and he had no capital. So yeah, I put as much blame on him
That's
as anybody else.
also government that.
And he's a Democrat.
Did
I
their
don't give a
part to
crap
make
about
that
that. I mean, I voted for him, but shit.
Yeah.
Well, that was that one action by Congress and the president, by the government, wreaked so much havoc financially for people who aren't financial institutions.
Well,
For people who
use that as
aren't
an
banks.
example of like what we're going through right now. When you're not, like, if let's say as much as I hate to say we need to bail out the airlines, certainly need to bail them out with the right regulations in place so they don't
Yes,
spend money on
okay,
shit
fine.
that they don't need. But
I'm
we
all
do
for
need
that.
to let them make sure they operate.
I'm all
make
for
sure
it. I'm
that
all
that
for
is-
getting them operational. I'm all for not having the United States government be the entity that operates them.
Right.
I'm all for the non-nationalization of airlines. But if airlines aren't going to prepare for this kind of thing in the future, if they're not going to take care of their employees, they're going to use that money that's given to them by the American taxpayer essentially to prop themselves up. So the CEO and like all the
I
upper
get
crust
that. Yeah,
ones,
that's without.
and I have a big
that's
problem
without.
with that.
I think that's without saying.
But you try to get the regulations that are necessary to ensure that doesn't happen through any kind of bill process, any kind of legislative process, you'll never get that through, ever. The Senate would never abide it.
Do you think that, I was thinking about this today, and this might be a really stupid thing to say, but do you think, like, the trillion, was it $2 trillion, bill, the relief
The
bill?
recent one? Yeah.
Yeah, do you think we could have put like $1 trillion into immediate testing and stuff to flush this out instead of give $2 trillion to everybody to sort of,
Prop themselves
Wait
up
it
until,
out.
prop themselves up until this all passes?
yeah,
Well, honestly, I'd say that giving money to people and to allow them to people, especially since everyone's affected by this, one way or another, giving money to people in that way is something that the government, that should be one of the primary functions of government, especially in a time of crisis. Now, I'm not saying advocating for some universal, income deal like the Andrew Yang thing necessarily, but that should be in a crisis situation, that should be one of the fundamental functions of government, is to take care of people during that crisis.
yeah, and I think we're doing that,
If
right?
that-
We're doing
that's-
that.
So,
You can agree we're doing that, right?
I would agree that is being done. I mean, yeah, the first round of checks that showed up in people's accounts today, or like over the weekend or something. And yeah, that's something's being done about that. Sure, that's awesome. Will it last? Who knows? Will it be enough? Who knows? Depends on how long this goes. Will they do it again? Who knows? If they have to, they
So
will. But it won't be as much money, and it won't be, it won't be as, it'll be much more. Won't be as quickly done. It won't be as rapid a passage of a bill. It'll be a lot more hotly contested.
Yeah.
Because not everybody got what they wanted, and you and I both know that in politics today, that is what it's all about. It's no longer about compromise, it's about getting everything that you want. You don't get it all, then you have to continue to fight tooth and nail so long as your agenda is covered.
Yeah, it's pretty sad.
Yes, it is sad. The saddest thing about American politics today.
Right, everybody, yeah.
Compromise doesn't exist anymore.
So we had a discussion earlier about fishing.
The ability to go
The
fishing.
ability to go fishing.
Yeah.
And I was saying that it's not necessarily the ability to go fishing, but the ability to use a public ramp.
Sure. Which is, 80% of people that are going to be able to go fishing are going to be using a public ramp.
Well, anybody that doesn't have a private ramp.
Right.
Which is not very many
most
people.
people.
So, So where do you fall? You think we should open ramps? Let people
No, I think that if you open ramps, then you have to have a DNR agent at, every single one of them, and maybe you can open a few of them. You don't have to open them all, but you can open, like in certain spots and certain, like around here, you could open, 10 of them up and down Congaree, Wateree,
If you open
Three
10,
Rivers area.
if you open 10 out of 30,
And you post a couple of agents at each one of these things if that's possible. I don't know if they have those kind of resources, but if they do, then do that and just make kind of do it from this time to this time, and make sure people aren't congregating and hanging out.
It'll be hard.
Yeah, but that's called policing the situation, and that's something that nobody wants
So
to do.
so that brings me to a point that I was thinking about the other day, and what do you think we should do with elections?
I think, and I think that elections is going to be really tricky, man. I think that I'm glad you brought this up actually, because I am a firm advocate of sending ballots to people's houses and letting them all fill them out there. And I get it, and I understand the arguments against that.
I disagree with that.
Well, I would like to hear why you disagree with that.
I just think there's just opening up to more fraudulent voting.
Okay, you're right about that. You are opening up to more fraudulent voting.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah,
you're also assuming that fraudulent voting occurs already, like rampantly, right?
Yes.
You believe that it does, although there is
Yes.
absolutely no evidence whatsoever, no study that anyone has ever done has ever revealed about this.
I think there
Ever
is.
done?
I think
Has
that
ever
there
done a
is.
study that has revealed
I'll
widespread
tell you-
voter
I'll
fraud?
tell you why I say that, because there is no operational entity known to man that there's not something being done incorrectly or wrong, intendedly wrong inside that industry or
Are
whatever.
you saying basically the law of averages dictates that people must
Right,
be,
yeah.
fraud must occur?
Right.
Well,
I think
that's-
everywhere there's something
that's
going on that's
statistic-
wrong.
That's at best statistical evidence. At best.
Fine. That's
That's
what I
not-
believe.
that's not-
I don't have proof to show you.
Right,
that
that's just a.
There's
just a-
fraudulent.
I didn't-
There are different.
I didn't
If this
have.
person gets called, there are like some isolated incidents.
I didn't have it. I
But
didn't
there's no
have it.
study that says
prepared.
it's rampant. I get that. But
No,
why
there
do
are
we?
studies that
Why?
say in fact quite the opposite. Very
Okay,
reputable.
all right, I'll give you that. There's not a lot of evidence. But why would we want to open ourselves up to creating an environment where somebody could have an easier way to be fraudulent?
Well, I would say
And it's
that.
kind of like this bank has never been robbed, so let's take security guard out because it's never been robbed, so we're good. So let's get rid of the security guard at the front door.
That's not at all the same.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's like if you're open to.
I would say that what you're talking about is you're saying that the potential for fraud
is
is
increased.
greater than the potential for the health risk that may exist at the time.
No,
This is-
no, we didn't go that far. We didn't go that far yet. I'm just
Okay,
saying,
well,
if you're
then-
saying we can actually,
Obviously, what I'm saying is contingent on whether or not we can go to
well, you
in-person elections.
gotta go there. And yeah,
If the health
you
risk
can't
doesn't
say-
exist at the time, then whatever, do what you got to do. But if the,
Okay,
health
here's-
risk, if the health risk is still prevalent enough,
Okay, first of all,
that I don't have a problem with, or at the very least, extending absentee balloting. Like, don't extend the window for it. Like, make sure the early voting is an absolute thing that you can do. I mean, they already do the early voting and all that stuff. That's already a thing that exists.
I know, but it
absentee
shouldn't be
balloting
done. There's
absolutely
more people
exists.
early voting than going to the polls.
But
than
the
they
reason
do.
absentee balloting should be
Listen,
opened up more widely to people.
Early
Absolutely.
voting is not. You
The fact is
know
that-
what you have to do when you early vote. You have to go in and say why you are early voting. I'm not going to be in town.
Sure.
Okay, here's a ballot. Most of the people lie about it.
Well, in the state of South Carolina, you don't need a reason for absentee balloting.
I know it's
You can do it
ridiculous.
for whatever reason you want.
I
Which
get
is
it.
interesting.
So why? Why do you have it if you can do it for any reason you want to?
Why do you have it?
No. Why do you ask if you can say whatever you want to? Like when I go into absentee ballot vote, which I did once.
Yeah.
When they ask me, well, why are you absentee ballot voting? Well,
Oh,
because
okay.
I'm going to be on vacation during the election. Okay, thanks. Here's your
I don't know.
ballot.
I don't know.
Like, well, why do you even ask?
It may be the same form that
So-
another
so
state
what's-
uses, and that state
so
requires
what
you to
can-
give a reason. So,
What
I mean, I really don't know.
well, in Richmond County, that's the way they do it. And so,
Well, that's a statewide thing, so it's not.
well, that's statewide then. I went and voted Richmond County. They have a Richmond County Election Commission, so I'm based it on that. But
Okay.
if it's statewide, great. The problem I have with that is that what campaigns do is they get people to absentee vote so they can say this many people voted, so we think we're going to win because we got all these absentee ballots going in, and we're ahead, we're going to win, so they can influence other people to say, well, they're going to win, so I'm going to vote for the winner.
Okay, so
That's what happens. That's what they do.
So
That's
let's
why you poll people.
let's assume that we are still in a health crisis,
Yeah. Okay.
pandemic situation,
Okay.
much like we are today
Yeah.
in November
Yeah.
when the election day occurs.
Right.
What's your solution?
You do what you were just saying about the ramps, is where you put in place safety precautions at the polls.
Like
Because-
make an appointment to vote?
Not appointment. You can have a 2-day voting window. You can have where you can only go in one at a time or whatever, or you can have
I'd be into that.
like you fix the poll itself
No, I'd be
to
totally
be
into that.
safe,
I'd be totally into that.
so you don't
I wouldn't
have to.
have- I wouldn't have a
See,
problem
this
with
this is
that.
what I think is going on with the national push to have more mailed ballots, is because you have more chance of fraud, which you got to
That's not what
agree.
it's about, but-
You got to. I think this is this is my opinion.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
So my opinion is it's a national push from the Democrats to have a mail-in ballot so it can be fraudulent, and that just wait, and
What?
that just wait,
Just realize
Just
how
wait.
ridiculous that sounds.
and because well, it does, it opens up more fraud.
Please,
fraud.
please,
So
continue.
so that they can have more control over the ballots, the votes that happen, and so instead of going into a poll, some reason that's like the worst thing to do is let people go into a poll to vote. I don't get it. Like, why is that such a hard thing to do? I know there are people legitimately reasons why they can't go to a poll, but you should only have a legitimate reason. There should not be a line out the door for absentee ballots the week before the actual vote itself.
Okay.
That shouldn't be a thing.
So you're saying,
That was a thing the last.
so just to recap for anybody paying attention still. You're saying that you think that this is a push by Democrats to commit voter fraud. That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
That sounds like what you just said.
Yeah.
Sounds like you're
I
saying.
do think that. Well, what are the reasons to do that? Here, what are the
I
reasons
can
would
give
they
you,
push?
I can give you a way
What are the
more
reasons?
direct
Give me one.
reason.
Give me the reason you think why they are opening that conversation.
So, not
to be safe, for people to be safe. Bullshit.
I mean, ideally, that's the
That's what they said.
That's the ostensible reason the Democrats are going to give.
Right, that's
is
what they
we're
said.
in this
That's
health
com-
crisis. We want to make people safe.
It's completely.
Does it benefit Democrats if more people vote? Absolutely, and that is a well-known understanding in the political science world. This is not something that a lot of people apparently know about, but in political science, this is one of the things that you learn is if the more people that vote, that is ultimately going to benefit Democrats.
Is that what Hillary banked on the last election?
I don't know, but all I can
Because she was wrong.
all I can tell
So
you
is everybody else.
all I can tell you is that the more people that vote, the higher the turnout in the vote. That's always going to tend to benefit Democrats.
Nationally?
In any
Not any district?
even district races, even
No, not
even,
I mean overall.
state and federal. I don't know about local. We didn't really.
No, I mean if it's state, even state, you wouldn't have.
But I can tell you
every-
right now.
every
I can tell
district.
you right now that the truth is that is the truth. That is like that's not like that's been true for probably 100 years. Like that's not.
All right, let's say it's true. Okay.
That's not a thing that's. I mean, you can debate it.
That's
if you
fine.
want
Then
to.
why did we not have mail-in ballots 100 years ago?
I can't.
What's
answer
the
that.
history of a
I didn't-
poll?
I didn't live 100 years ago, so
Well, you're
obviously I can't
a
answer that
political
question.
science major, right?
I was, yeah,
You are.
I was.
I mean, you got a degree in political
I
science.
did.
So don't you know the history of the polling place?
Not extensively, because I mean.
Well, what is the
just
history of the
minor.
polling place? Why do you have polling places? If you can, U.S. mail was around during some of the early elections. Why can't we just use
You're
U.S.
legitimately asking me right now why 100 years ago, mail-in ballots wasn't a legitimate way to do it, like a
Yeah.
viable way to
Yeah,
do it.
yeah. Why don't we just
You're
mail?
legitimately asking me that. Like you're not being sarcastic right now.
No, like why don't we just have mail-in
John,
ballots for
100 years ago.
Yeah,
100 years ago.
yeah.
Do you have any idea how long it took to get from one side of the country to the other 100 years ago? Do you have any idea how long it takes?
I do. No, it didn't take an hour. I know that.
Even by car? I mean,
I get it. I get it. Okay,
A few
I know
days?
that. I'm just saying
100 years
that.
ago probably take you 2 weeks.
Okay, let's take 20 years ago. Fine. Let's take 30 years ago.
20 years ago, I mean.
20 years ago, the mail got just like it is now. It's the same thing
Right.
20 years ago.
Right.
So why did 20 years ago the Democrats bring it up?
Well, for starters, there wasn't quite the same health crisis that we're in right now.
Okay. So you think they're blaming it on the health? You think they're because they want to keep people?
I think
healthy?
they're using the health crisis to
Okay, why would they use a health crisis to make it mail
because it's convenient for them, John. Don't you
For
think,
what
Do
reason?
you think they don't know that they benefit if more people vote for them. They know that.
Okay, so
Why are
that
Republicans
goes.
against it?
So
Republicans know they don't
that
benefit
goes
from that.
because it's more.
That's why Republicans are
Because
against
it
it. It has
opens
nothing
more
to do with
fraud.
No.
Yes, it does. The reason why.
Look. The pandemic is what Democrats are using to push this. The fraud concept is what Republicans are using to refute it. But the truth is neither one of those things. The truth is that the more people that vote, the more benefit that is to Democrats.
Great. That's
The fewer
right.
people that vote, the
That's
more
right.
benefit that is to
Also,
Republicans, and that's the reality of it. And
Okay.
that's something that's well and widely
all right.
known in the
I
political
bet
cycle.
that if you said if we could pay for votes, then more Democrats would vote than Republicans would vote. Because there are more Democrats than the Republicans, and everybody gets paid to vote. Then everybody goes and shows up at the polls and gets paid to vote. So I mean, it's like, yeah, that's a thing, but it's not the right thing. I mean, if you're going to verify a vote, you should show up in person as the person's going to vote,
So, John,
and the person needs to see you vote.
You're still not hearing what I'm saying.
I do hear what you're
I
saying.
feel like you're just like complaining about the fact that Democrats want to do this thing. What I'm saying is that yes,
Okay, let's take the fraud out of it.
Of course
Democrats
Democrats
wanted to
want
do
to
it
do
to
this.
win,
Of
right?
course they do.
They want to do it to win, right?
Yes.
Okay, well that's not the way to win.
Yeah. Guess
To,
what?
to,
Yes,
to,
it is.
to adjust the
Yes, it is.
the way we vote and to open up for more
no.
fraudulent ways
It just makes
to
their job.
win.
It just makes their job easier, so they don't have to get so many organizers out there
They don't have to run a candidate. is what
to
it is.
get people. No,
They don't have to have a viable candidate
They
running
don't have to
another
go
candidate.
pick people up, in a bus and
Right.
take them to the polling places,
Right.
tell them who to vote for on the way off the bus.
The
They don't have to do that.
Right, right, yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Well,
But-
why wouldn't Republicans want to not pick up people in the bus and take them and tell them who to vote for?
Because those people aren't going to vote Republican.
They're going to vote Democrat.
Much less likely that people who require you to go get picked up by a bus to go vote that can't take themselves to the poll, it's far more likely they're going to vote Democrat.
Wow.
I mean, that's just demographics, man. That's political demographics.
Wow. That's
Probably
so what you're saying is that-
It probably sounds super racist. What I'm saying is that
Yeah.
for 100 years, the Democratic Party has nurtured their relationship with minority groups. Nurtured
I
them.
agree with that.
Whereas Republicans have essentially shunned them and tried to take everything away from them.
That's
And
not
that-
true.
and
That's
so-
absolutely
and
not
how
true.
that manifests itself is that the more people you get to vote, including
How do you think
minorities,
people took away stuff?
well, it's not. It's
How do
not.
Republicans take away
It's
stuff?
not that they did; it's that they're perceived to have. The
Right.
point I'm trying
From
to
the
make is
Democrat, you
the
know.
point that I'm trying to make is that if you look at certain demographics in this country, you know collectively how that demographic is going to vote every single
Okay,
time.
then here's my point. Here's one of my points. Is that if they're using COVID-19 to push an agenda that they want to have, right?
They're using that as their pushing off point for this agenda piece that they've had
Right.
for a long time.
Gotcha. Why?
It benefits
Why?
them greatly to have that.
Well, why?
That's why they're bringing it up.
Because it's their opportunity to.
Democrats call bullshit and say fraud because they know that if this goes through, they are screwed. What the president said the other day was absolutely 100% right. But anyone who's ever studied political science could have told you that.
Okay. Well,
Any day.
okay.
All you gotta do is ask.
That's fine. But my point is this: Why do you even have to do that? Like, what's the point in doing that? Only to win because they know more
Yes.
Democrats will
The
vote.
point is win. The point
But
is win.
they didn't.
Politics,
They've
the point
never.
is-
I've never heard anybody talk about more mail-in ballots than I have now.
Because now it's a thing that may actually
Because
occur.
there's a reason, a jumping
Yes,
point that
how
you
are you
get
not
it
saying
done.
this? Like now,
I see that.
Now
I
it's
see
a
that.
far more prevalent possibility, something that people are actually thinking about, like as an
Okay.
actual possibility, not just some pie in the sky idea that
Okay,
Democrats
let me
want
go.
everybody to
Let me go backwards. Do you think that's okay
what?
to have mail-in ballots?
Yes,
More
I
mail-in ballots.
just said at the top of this subject, I'm a huge advocate for mailing a ballot to every single
Why?
person's house and letting them
Why?
vote. Because it benefits Democrats. If you want to know the truth, because that works against Donald Trump. And
That
all
is
that.
not the way to win an election, in my opinion.
Well, that's too bad.
You should sway somebody.
That's too
just-
bad. That's your
pick a
opinion.
candidate.
That's how people win elections all the time.
I know, I get that, but I mean, the Democrats are trying. Don't you agree? They're trying every damn thing in the world to try to figure out how to win without actually running a viable candidate against Donald Trump, who they
Well,
think is
I
the
don't know
biggest,
that- I don't-
biggest POS in the world.
I don't
They said
know that-
he shouldn't be president. He should be resigned. And he's all these bad things. Yet we can't find one candidate to run against him and beat him.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that you can find a single candidate because who the hell knows what a candidate, the viable candidate, even looks like, today. I mean, it seems like
a viable candidate means somebody that's better than Donald Trump. I mean, everybody, all the Democrats say all the time
then
that
that
he's such a
literally-
bad person,
My
and he's such
opinion
a
is-
baby, and all this stuff, and he's such a whatever, and racist and all this. He's such a bad person, but they don't have one person in their party that is better than him to run against him.
I don't mean that's a matter of opinion. A lot of
It's
people
my
would say,
opinion.
a lot of people would have said
It's
Bernie Sanders is better than him. A lot of
Well,
people
why
would
is he
say
not
that.
running against him? He's
Because
out.
Bernie Sanders, his message went too far.
Because he's not. Because he's not. He's
Well,
not.
because his
getting-
message is too far to the left. I mean, that's simple as that. Bernie Sanders, I get what he's advocating for, and I understand what he
He
wants.
just got simply voted. Not
But
voted.
people are afraid that if Bernie Sanders became the president or the nominee, his message would be so far to the left that he would lose a lot of
I
centrist voters.
don't believe that. I think it's because
Okay.
he doesn't play ball with the.
I'm not asking you to believe
corruption
anything
in
that I
Washington.
say, John. I'm just
I know
offering up my opinion.
So my opinion in that is that he's not playing ball with all the corruption in Washington, and they don't want him there. That's why he didn't run last
Sanders?
time. Yeah,
I mean, the man's been a senator for some time
I
now.
know, but he's just a senator at that point. He's
Just a senator.
He's an independent senator most of
United
the
States
time.
Senator is one of the most powerful people in Washington.
Yeah, but he's an independent senator. He can get
He's independent
drowned
from
out.
Vermont. That doesn't mean that he's independent on the national level. That means he's independent from Vermont. That's a completely different concept. He's independent because
So why does he want to run for president if he's nothing? Or if he's already
he
powerful?
thinks his message is good enough. No, I'm saying he's
It ain't all
independent.
about the message.
He's independent because he's further left than the Democratic Party in Vermont.
Okay, so Biden's
Not because,
so
not
Biden's
because
the
he's in
guy.
the middle.
So Biden's the
I
guy that
understand.
can beat Trump.
I think anybody's the guy that can beat Trump. I literally
Really?
think anybody. can
Really?
beat- Yeah, anybody.
So you think
I think there's gonna be a lot of people just like me who are like anybody but Donald Trump. I don't give a shit who you put up there.
so you
I literally don't care.
so you think this mail-in thing doesn't really matter? You
No,
still,
I think it
still
matters.
get beat.
I think it matters.
Trump will still get beat.
I think it matters, but I mean, again, like in politics, you don't ever want to hang your hat on like a sure thing. It's just not that thing.
So, well, because there are more Democrats in the nation than there are Republicans.
I never said that, but I'm glad that you did.
Well, that's what you're getting at. If everybody had a mail-in ballot, then there'd be more
I
Democrats.
never said that out loud, but you did. So there we
Oh,
go.
but you were thinking it.
No, that's true. That's a true statement.
Okay, you just
Or at
said,
least,
you
at
just
least,
said it too. Then.
at least there were. I mean, no, I was told that
You-
by one of my teachers, a very
Whatever. And
honorable,
so
a very honorable professor and well known in the
Democrat,
political world.
well-known Democrat.
He's a Democrat, yeah.
Okay, and he's biased, and he
He's a-
hates Trump, and he's, you know what I mean? Like it's
Old
all
school Democrat,
a
yeah.
bunch of crap. So then the mail-in ballot thing is the only way that they're going to win. Basically, that's why they're pushing it.
Oh, I don't know that's the only way they're going to win.
What other way they're going to win?